The COVID environment, its effect on multifamily, has it impacted vacancy rates?
Yes, it absolutely has. What we're seeing for the first time is apartments going on the market, and we're not getting calls, and people are not answering the ads. We've lowered prices, we've offered more incentives, and that doesn't seem to be changing anything. So, definitely, I think, a result of that.
What do you get a sense of what the vacancy rate is? It's hard to really put your finger on it, especially since Mike and Patty retired. What about the inner city, Capitol Hill, Queen Anne, Green Lake? What's the occupancy rate or the vacancy rate there, roughly?
Well, that's probably the interesting thing that we're finding, because we do have a lot of buildings under management, is that the better buildings that we have, where the income level is higher, are running at about 97% occupancy and 97% in terms of people paying their rent. The problem buildings that we have is with the lower priced units. Even it's ridiculous today to say lower price, because even those are like $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 plus utilities and parking. Those buildings is where we're really having problems with vacancies, and the vacancy hasn't changed that much because of the moratorium. So even people that can't pay and have not been able to pay since March are still in the units. They're not moving out, and they don't have to pay rent.
So even with those, say, Class B, Class C buildings, I guess we could call them, the vacancy rate still, the occupancy rate still is like 97% for those, or is it a little bit lower than that?
I would say in those buildings, I'd say probably about 95%. And I think, the difference is the economic vacancy that we're facing as opposed to the physical vacancy.
That was going to be my next question. Of those tenants that are in place, what's the collection? It used to be, I was hearing it was 90%. Has that changed?
No, and again, our buildings have always operated well, but we pay a lot of attention to the tenants, and we're really on top of our game. So we have, as I think I alluded to earlier, the collections on the better buildings, on the B. We don't do A buildings, or the new institutional properties, but we have some big buildings that are, I would call them, B plus or maybe A minus with amenities. Those buildings are operating at about a 97% collection. Those people are still employed. Most of them are working for Amazon. They're in the IT business, and they're fully employed. The ones that will be the C buildings, those are the ones that we're seeing about 80% or 20% economic vacancy, or 75% or 25% economic vacancy, because those are the buildings where the people have been hardest hit. They're in the food service industry and other hourly employees that have lost their jobs or have suffered a lot of cutbacks.
This is sort of dovetails into some of Michael's questions. He wanted to ask about the political environment and how that's, Michael?
Well, yeah, first, I was curious how, the neighborhood breakdown in some of the buildings that you managed with the University of Washington being sort of not in full motion at this point. Has the U District taken more of a hit? Has what happened on Capitol Hill, is there still lingering effects as a result of that? What are you guys seeing?
There is no question in my mind that because of the way the city council and the mayor have acted towards owners, and the way that they've handled the problems that have occurred on Capitol Hill, those neighborhoods are no longer the star places where people want to live anymore. We're seeing a lot of flight from in-city properties to out of the city properties. People are afraid. There's still a great deal of crime in those areas that didn't used to exist so rampantly, and so we're I don't think it's ever going to be back to where it was before all this started. Where it's going to end up and how it will balance out is anybody's guess. But it's not positive, I will tell you that. And so many of the people that are moving out not because they've lost their job. They don't want to live in the downtown corridor anymore. If you drop down into Belltown and those areas, people can't get in and out of their buildings on street level because of the homeless problem that's there. and that's it's a very bad situation.
Where are they moving to?
Most of them are moving now up to Linwood. They're moving to the east side. They're moving to Bothell. Some of them are moving down south, all different directions. And, when the Sound Transit comes online, that's really going to be a game changer because you don't have to live in the city anymore. You can, jump on a train and be in the city in 10 or 15 minutes. That's changing. I think people working from home is going to have a tremendous effect on rentals because, first of all, there's been a real push on because of the rent prices to have these mini units, the 350 square foot units. Well, people are working from home now. Those aren't going to be the things that people want to have. They want more space, and they don't have to be as close into the office buildings as they used to have to be. So we're going to see again. There's so many moving parts to what's happening, and it just requires constant watching and trying to figure out what the next move is going to be when that happens, because I don't think anybody really knows what's happening at this point.
Do you see that happening more on Capitol Hill, say, than Queen Anne, that movement out?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Yeah, Capitol Hill is still, it's depressing. I mean, you drive through Capitol Hill, it used to be such a vibrant place. And a lot of it's the effect of COVID. It was active with people and restaurants and coffee shops. And I was touring an investor through there last evening. Not evening, it was about 3:30, 4 o'clock. Streets were dead. Most of the restaurants were closed. Very, very few people on the street. And I think that it's not a good situation.
Are there certain types, aside from the amenity standpoint and maybe interior finishes, are there certain types of units that are renting quicker right now? Are one bedrooms more desirable? The reason I ask is you're hearing as a result of COVID and people staying home that people's relationships are falling apart because they're with each other 24 hours a day and a lot of breakups. Are you seeing that studios and one bedrooms are renting quicker than say a larger 2-bedroom unit?
No, I think the larger units, in our experience, the larger units are renting better because people want more space. If you drive by the buildings that have a lot of studios, there's one on the foot of Queen Anne that's got a lot of small 1-bedrooms, and they're running about, I think they have 30 vacancies out of 100 units.
Wow.
It's the studios and the mini apartments are absolutely more troublesome than the larger units in other buildings because people don't want to be that close to each other anymore. But I haven't heard. I think a lot of that's press, that people are fighting and getting divorced. 9 months from now, you'll probably hear there's a big baby boom.
Right.
Are stuck into it.
Right.
So, I haven't experienced that. We have not experienced that. And,
Okay.
and as I say, we are really on top of our guests and our residents and our buildings, and so we're in constant communication with them. And we're small enough to be able to have that personal connection, and we're not hearing any of that.
Got it. What outside of COVID, with some of the new regulations and certainly the general direction that the city council has taken, in the last few years, what have been some of the challenges getting everybody at Foundation Group up to date on what's going on to make sure that you're in regulatory compliance and not don't have the city breathing down your neck?
Well, we are extremely cautious, as everybody has to be. I've got a real estate attorney that, we used to use them once in a while. Now we're, whenever something comes out that isn't exactly 100% clear, we'll have to get their feedback. But you've got to be vigilant. We had one of our on-site managers send out a rental increase. It was an accidental situation. And within 3 days, we received a phone call from the Attorney General. And I have to tell you, we thought it was a joke. They left the message saying it was the Attorney General. We thought someone was playing a prank on us, but we looked up the phone number and everything, and it was for real. And they were very nice about it. We explained that it was an accident. So I think that today, and I think it's more difficult on the individual property owners because, it's our job to stay on top of this stuff and be involved with it. And if you're a single property owner, or, maybe you have 2 or 3 buildings, and you're not managing full time, it's very, very easy to get yourself into trouble today. In general, renters have become extremely litigious, and they know their rights. They have free legal representation, and so you've got to just be careful today of how you do things and make sure that you're in compliance.
On that front, do you get the sense that there are tenants out there that are, maybe listening to, you mentioned sort of emboldened, but are listening to some of these maybe fringe voices that are encouraging people not to pay their rent, even if they have the ability to do so?
I've heard that. I haven't experienced that. I mean, maybe some of the people that are in place are in that direction, but no one's going to come out and tell you that's why they're doing it. What I'm really afraid of is, not afraid, but I don't know how to handle it, is when this rent moratorium burns off on currently December 31st. They've extended it twice. They may extend it again at the expense of solely putting it on the landlords, which is absolutely ridiculous. But when that burns off, these people are going to owe a lot of money to the landlords, maybe $16,000, $15,000, and I have no idea how they're going to be able to make that up, even though we have to give them a 1-year payment program. A lot of the people were just hanging on, barely making their rent to begin with, and now if you add that on top of it, God only knows.
But they still seem to be, most of them, even in the face of government encouraging them not to pay, most of them seem to be paying.
Most of them are, why? Because I've always said that people want to, the last thing people will give up is the roof over their head. And I think most intelligent renters know that if you don't pay your rent and you get evicted, it's going to be very difficult to get another unit. Landlords are just going to look at that wrong.
What percentage of your tenancy, say, is working on a payment plan? Maybe they can't pay all of the rent, maybe just a portion.
They haven't. Our commercial tenants have started payment plans, but our multifamily people that aren't paying or will not pay, I am sure, until the moratorium burns off in December.
But there are how many of those are not paying then?
Well, again, it goes back to the beginning of the conversation. In the C buildings, probably 20-25% some of the buildings are not paying rent. Mm-hmm. And in our better buildings, only 3% aren't paying rent.
Got it. Has some of these shifting jobs to the east side and various other places, or have you seen any? And that wouldn't have been directly maybe COVID related or even recent, but have certain communities or certain buildings that where you manage property taken a hit as a result of, say, Facebook or Amazon shifting jobs elsewhere, or is there enough of a job pool out there that really doesn't impact rental rates or vacancy rates?
I don't think it will. I think the city is in for an adjustment. We have lived very, very high on the hog, if you will, for the last 7, 8, 10 years. As quickly as we would get a vacancy, it would fill within a day or two, and it stayed that way. The other thing that we're really going to be facing that I think people have not thought about is that we're very careful when we lease units to make sure that they do not become vacant in the winter months, because between October to February, it is very difficult to rent a unit in the city of Seattle. So we always make sure that our rents, if they come up for renewal, are coming up in April, May, June, July, August. So if we have to turn them over, we'll get a tenant right in there. With all of these people now not paying, and if they do vacate in December, it's going to be just a bear to get those units rented.
Look in your crystal ball. How much of what's going back to COVID? How much of what's going on is going to continue? Do you think? I mean, once COVID is over, are we still going to be wearing masks? Are people still going to be working from home now that companies realize it can be done?
Yeah, I really do believe that at least maybe 20% of companies have realized that they do not need to have employees on site, that it's very effective to have them working from home. So I think moving forward, we're going to see companies downsize on the amount of square footage that they're leasing. They'll have shared offices where people will come in on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and the other ones will come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays and switch that around. So we're in for an adjustment. In terms of the mask and cleanliness and everything else. First of all, I don't believe COVID's going away until fourth quarter of next year, hopefully. So we're going to be with it for a while, and I think the results of it will stay around for a long time. But eventually, people being people, and we'll go back to quote unquote normal. But it's going to be a new normal. It's never going to be the same as it was pre-COVID.
No handshakes anymore. Fist bumps.
I think that'll come back. I'm a hugger, so I hope it comes back.